We talk about it a lot, that the first time Newtel reveals, did they bring prep to the table? Is there something new they're going to try? Are they going to stick to roads commonly traveled? Okay, here we have a Sicilian to start with, G3 played on E6, so we're not going to see the mainline open Sicilians, at least not right away from Magnus.
Right. And also, Fabi, they've gone back and forth in the Sicilian, not specifically this one as much as I'm used to, but, we've seen the Sicilian discussed in depth between these two. They're not going to go, maybe for the most popular one. And instead, G3 is played. This is a common blitz move that just avoids the mainline open Sicilians with D4. There might still be a pawn to D4, but if it does get played, it's usually going to be more supported with C3.
Yeah, note the pause there by Fabi after Queen E2, because White sometimes has tricky lines where you're going to play E5 and kick the knight early. He took a moment, decided he's actually not into that. He's going to keep the center closed and keep a stranglehold on D4 for now.
Yeah, Rook E8 has been played. There's this weird move that happened a couple moves ago. Pawn E6 to E5. I think that probably caught a lot of us off guard. Why would you play E6 and then play E5? Well, White has also changed the setup as well. We've seen queen out to E2 early, bishops fianchettoing. This is an abnormal structure for White as well. You don't want to allow maybe that pawn to push to E5, which White was thinking about. That would open the bishop, would make sense with the queen on E2. So yes, he's lost some time, but White is developing in a bit of an unusual way.
Yeah. And now if you looked at it, you could make a guess at the move order that got you here. I think you would probably still guess E4, but it could even have been a move 1 knight F3, some sort of King's Indian attack type of structure being set up. And often in those positions, White will strive for F4, which is why Magnus brought that knight back. So we'll see what he chooses to do now that Rook B8 is played.
Yeah, sometimes you get these weird maneuvers in this opening. We're actually seeing it on the board right now. It's like the knight from B1 went to A3, C4, E3. The knight from G1 went to F3, D2. Maybe it will return to the C4 square. So just so interesting to see these knights. It's like they could have reached these squares much quicker, but they've been kind of dancing around in an unusual way, maneuvering to their best squares.
Fascinating to see an only move by the computer suggested in such a tame-looking position. Fabi does find it. I think it's because you really could not afford White to have played F5 and then start to go for this all-out attack. So interesting that Fabi senses the moment, can't let Magnus keep the structure closed, and does play the best move to keep a little more open tension in the position. So,
yep, you're highlighting exactly what everyone in this game is focusing on, the rook on E8 and the queen on E2. That in some cases allows for D5 to be played in the right moment, also B7 to B5, and then onwards to B4, looking to carve out the D4 square for the C6 knight. Of course, Magnus would look to leave the pawn on C3, never play C4, never take on B4, but in terms of counterplay for Fabi, it's probably going to be with that B pawn. That's why he has the rook on B8 and perhaps even G6, and looking to get that bishop on the long diagonal.
Yeah, I like that. That's a slow plan there. Though I like what Fabi has gotten over here on the queen side too with B5. Whether he keeps going with things like B4 or not, it already feels like Black has maintained the position. And that's not just because the computer thinks it's 50-50. I think just about everything is equal here. They're also pretty close on the clocks. Both players kind of finding their pace here. So this is gonna be a day today. Magnus Fabi. You and I have had some close matches so far, Amon. Knock on wood. We've had some good luck. I just knocked on wood for us, not to jinx it.
Thank you. Yeah, looking out.
You're welcome.
We see, rook A8 because the bishop on C1 can't move. Now, it seems like, we've got the highest rated player in the world just, forgetting to finish development, but it's actually kind of a feature of these openings. Notice how the bishop is guarding the B pawn, which could come under attack, queen A1, queen A2. So it's really kind of helpful for Magnus to say, okay, let's trade the rooks on the A file. That wasn't doing anything for me. My focus is more in the center and on the king side. And the bishop on C1, truthfully, can do all it needs to do on the king side from C1. So it's just about getting maybe the other pieces out of the way in front of it. And we see a very combative move here that is getting a question mark, Danny, but Magnus is not playing this for no reason. He's calculated something.
Yeah, it's a practical shot, too, taking advantage of the temporary pin on the long diagonal because that knight on C6 can't move without losing a rook. White has two pieces attacking A8, kind of an X-ray through this. So So is black going to take twice and take with the rook? That is what Magnus is inviting. But what is
Mm-hmm.
the tactical? Ooh, he has knight
Knight
e4. He's
e4.
taking advantage of another knight pin with f7 being under fire.
Yeah, and you're all in on, you know, removing the pieces. For example, bishop e7. He might even be thinking about knight takes f6 followed by knight to d5. Or maybe in some weird way you could play knight d5 first. I don't know. But I think it's all about that f7 square and the pressure generated on the f file. However, you know, the computer is saying that everything's okay. It might have to do with the fact that the rook on e5 in the right moment when the e3 knight moves could slide to f5. And that, I think, deals with that f file. Yeah, the pressure nicely on the f file.
Yeah, I used the blue arrow there because I wanted to highlight a Mon suggestion would be maybe the computer idea. But another idea could be that once you play bishop e7, you also have the... Okay, he brings the queen over right away. I was going to say the queen isn't stuck on a8. She can slide over and also start to help. Computer did not like that move order, though. Really wanted Fabiano to play bishop e7 first.
Right. Yeah, I guess just... Well, here there's knight takes f6, and there is a pawn hanging there, so... Just at the minimum, there's that available. I think Magnus already could say that his idea is worth it, but he does go for that knight d5 move. I mentioned this one last turn. Yeah. We didn't have to take on f6. We could just go immediately. The idea is, again, f7 is falling, and if you take with the rook, knight takes f6 now, picks up the rook on d5.
Yeah, we got to analyze this just to show the tactics, because Amon called it nice eye, and now it's on the board. If rook, well, I'm just going to quickly show. If rook takes, as Amon was saying, you take on f6 with check, and then no matter how black takes back, you're picking up the rook here. So that's how you get away with that knight being on pre. But we don't need to show what happens if knight takes, because it's exactly what Fabi did, and it's already on the board. Queen takes f7. I think Magnus will just recoup the bishop, or is there something else here?
The reality is there doesn't need to be anything else. Like, that is already very good. The only other moves you're trying to look at are maybe knight g5, bishop e4 check, but it just, like I said, unnecessary. You've got the bishop pair, you've got an extra pawn. There's probably a very important move, if I had to guess here, because I'm surprised that... Or actually, hang on a sec. I correct myself. Not an extra pawn.
Yeah, not an extra pawn, because Magnus sacked,
Yep, he sacked, exactly. So, you know, I was wondering why the evaluation could be so close to equal here. This is the advantage, I think, that Magnus was looking for. And key difference, Danny, that bishop e7 move that the engine liked, it would have saved the bishop from being hanging in this exact line.
Yeah. No, totally. And well said that Magnus isn't up a pawn yet, but he does have the bishop pair, which makes other pawns weaker. Can't take just yet. Rook e1 check would be lights out. So Magnus has to think about how he wants to either get the bishop in the game. Okay, he does go to d2, which is nice, because not only does it guard e1, but it might even have plans to use e1 and eventually relocate to some different diagonals. Although I think if Magnus gets one more move, the rook coming over here behind the pawns is an idea, although as I highlighted, you can't do any of it yet because the knight and bishop guard everything. So keep an eye out for the rook swinging over to attack black's queenside pawns.
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting for maybe a move like c4. I don't know if it was possible or the right idea on that last move, but pawn to c4 undermines the e4 knight in a nice way. But moves that attack the rook were bothering Fabi, which is why he brought the knight back to defend that bishop on f5 for exactly this reason. You know, bishop to f4, pawn to d4, moves hitting the rook were kind of annoying. Notice how the bishop on g3 does defend e1, so knight c5 is a threat.
It's funny, the only move was king to g6 because of knight to c5, and Magnus doesn't have to be asked twice. He finds it. That rook is running out of squares. You got all kinds of problems there.
Yeah, rook e2, bishop c6, or rook f5, like some combination. You're losing something, and well, he says, okay, let's take on d3. Knight takes e6, d2. Is that the idea? And then maybe bishop f3. Oh my goodness, what is this?
Wow. Magnus played rook takes. And that's a fascinating move instead of just taking the rook. I guess on d2, couldn't you have still played bishop f3? So I don't know what Magnus calculated fully there. I think just taking e6 was the best computer line, but here we go. Back to 50-50 if Fabi finds the best move, which he does. He's going to pick up his piece back.
Yeah, he's going to get the piece, and I think the really nasty part is the knight on d1 is situated perfectly to win one of the pawns on the queen side, so should be doing a good job. I imagine we're going to see knight c7. This kind of move in order to try to take that b pawn.
Interesting. b4 first, trying to cement the b5 pawn. He's going to probably protect c3. Yeah, he does that so that he can go back to your idea with knight to c7 next. I think in a practical sense, I still like White's chances here, but definitely not the most Magnus could have gotten from that blunder earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you could trade a pair of knights here, I think Fabi would be nearly winning the endgame. But of course, both players here are well aware of that, and we're certainly not going to see it happen.
Yeah, and Fabi doing the best, though. He's going to go remove that bishop. Oop, nope. You go there, but now the knight comes to e4. Now. Yeah, this bishop is running out of squares. Fabi's in a great spot here.
Mm-hmm. The knight will guard b5 after knight takes c3, by the way. It's definitely riskier to be playing with the bishop here, but the one thing that you can underestimate is we see king f3 looking to fork with the king. How about that?
Wow. We might get an all-out nice knight race. You almost never see these. If black goes for the h2 pawn, okay, you take b4. Is Fabi going to go for the h2 pawn while white wins the b5 pawn, and we have... I have no idea what we have here. This is going to be wild.
Because you can go knight c4 to a3 or knight c4 to d6 and guard the pawn. Is he losing connection? The webcam, he looked upset about some connection there.
What happened there?
Well, obviously, yeah. I'm not sure if the webcam is anything to read into. Like, the quality of it is what I mean, because I have been noticing that Fabi's cam quality here is, not the highest, but clearly he wasn't liking something even before his time was running out. I'm not sure he was able to get that moving.
Yeah, that's super frustrating. I don't know where Fabi's playing from. He doesn't look like he's in his normal home setup based on the Fabiano we know. So whatever happened there with the connection is highly unfortunate, but it is unfortunately one of the things you have to factor in a high stakes online match. So we're going to see if the team is working with Fabiano to figure something out.